Judaism is hostile nativity, which means that it no longer has the ability to record messages. So, messages in Judaism would actually be part of a mass agreement, which is a dialectic of who gets to have superiority. So, superiority would be a left wing version of who gets to have the high ground in negotiation. So left wingers usually believe in freedom, justice, and the American way. But since they are no longer fascist, they actually have slave propaganda given to them. So not only do they believe in the ability to discord with their opposite self, the opposite self takes charge and delivers the message. So this message would not be in schizoaffective disorder, but in actual propaganda. So propaganda is a media and the mind becomes a record. So if the record of retrieval is that the absolute deity is the left wing, then that makes God the right wing. So, since right wingers are the normal here, why are the record of contracts given to them? So, contracting is a right wing sport because it happens to have censorship. Right wingers always censor themselves because they do not have the means to reproduce licensing of Nazism. So, since they're not Nazis, they are actually recorded in history as the party that got defeated by the Nazis. So, right wingers are actually people who took fascism too literally. They thought that since my Nazism is censored, I no longer have the right to be a fascist. So they're neither communist nor Mormon, but in fact Muslim. So, since Muslims are more of a proposition than a demonstrable evidence, so that God is replaceable in the normalcy of left wing ideology, so that if the ability to retrieve sport would be the ability to retrieve the germification of a output. So germs would be the specialization of the right wing, while the left wing specializes in math. So this unfairness of how left wingers are absolutely deified would actually be a proposition of Jesus. So Jesus would be the intellectual sphere of how one gets from the ability to reproduce to the ability to solidify common sense. So that common sense is a ticket to accepting the World Series as is. So, since these records of rights are always right wing, which means they do not have the ticket of germs, they have the ticket of brainwashing. These brainwashing germs are actually zombified ethics, and that they must accept the loan to be a God sphere of their own. So that Jesus has to be hung on the cross and survive their ethics. So when I mean by that Jesus is hung on the cross, I don't mean in a Wicca sense that Jesus is some kind of absolute deity. I mean that God was given to the cross and he must record the cross as if it is a missionary. So the missionary is what gives the cross meaning rather than the people themselves that are hung on it. And the missionary retrieves the contract for the cross through the right wing. So this is how also the church staples Lutheran projects onto bulletin boards. They leave misnomers on the bottom of the pages so they can rip them off and then allow for the cross to achieve mass. So Mass is still a Judaistic ethic, but while Judaism is Muslimified in the right wing, the Mormons in the left wing believe that they must cross over on both sides and become Jews again. So Jews are the return of left wing ideology, while Mormons are the absolute right wing because they have lost their meaning for their government. So that censorship and also brainwashing are both sins of this church, but they are also sins of communism. And this is who they are fighting. They are fighting communists so that they can achieve a vertex of the cross on their own. So this is baby ethics to me, where communism, on the other hand, is growing up inside the missionary on both sides and Germanifying them to allow for workers and workers' struggle to achieve a socialist and nationalist point of view. So once liberty is granted, not only do the Methodists allow for humanization to occur, these abilities to cross over are lost on themselves through spheroid and void mentality. So that spheres are not in ethics, but in virtue. And virtue is an achievement of the chained ethics of human spirit. So virtue and spirit are what these specialize in socialism and nationalism, while National Socialism on the left wing are actually the virtues of taking over the government and allowing for instigation of fights to occur. So this is a battle royale ethic, so that people do not fight over democracy, but democracy wins together with the people against them. So while communists fight communists, the Nazis and the fascists also fight themselves.